Hey there, before the episode gets started, real quick, this is Shasta Ray, and I want to acknowledge that I'm still working out a few kinks when it comes to my recording space and my microphone, and this first episode, I'm not entirely happy with the sound quality, but I like the content, so I'm going to go ahead and publish. Your patience is so appreciated while I get started on this new podcast adventure. All right, that's all I got for this little intro message. Let's go ahead and get started on that episode. Hello, and welcome to the Comforting Voice Podcast. I'm your host, Shasta Ray, and this is our first official episode. Oh my gosh, isn't that exciting? How is everybody out there? Are you catching this podcast for the very first time when I post the very first episode? Or are you discovering this after the fact, maybe a couple years from now? Wouldn't that be cool to think about right now? All the future people that tune in to this episode, and it's not even now. That's cool to think about. Wow. Well, welcome. Whenever you're finding this, or whoever you are, or however you found this, welcome, and it's nice to have you here. Like I said, my name is Shasta Ray, and I'm a podcaster. I really like podcasting. I'm just kind of a hobbyist. I've had 3 other podcasts. You've probably never heard of them. They didn't get very big because they were so incredibly niche that it was hard to find them, right? They were so narrowed down, and it was such a small target audience. So the first one was more or less a project when I took a podcasting class, and it was fun. But it wasn't really destined to go anywhere, and it was a wonderful learning experience. I had a lot of fun with it. Then I took on a project all my own. Oh my goodness, I put out a podcast that ran for a couple years, very successfully for as tiny as it was, accumulating a co-host along the way. He's wonderful. His name's Tim. I might invite him on here sometime. But at any rate, we put it on hiatus for a couple of years. We started getting kind of burned out as well as overloaded with other projects. So we put it on hiatus where we just put out the occasional random episode. And we started kind of ramping back up to put more content out. We were getting some great ideas. We were starting to record again. But I was just so burned out on that. Even though I love it, it's my own little project. It's my little baby. I will always have a fondness for that and, a fierce protective attitude towards it. But Tim is a fantastic co-host, full of ideas and renewed enthusiasm. So in the stress of life, I said to him a couple months ago, hey, you want your own podcast? People already love you. So he is out there taking that challenge head on, having a blast, and he is creating a whole new listener base for it. It's awesome. So that was kind of its own little entity. And then I went into a third podcast that I put out about 75 really high quality episodes that I'm proud of. But here again, very, 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 very niche and a very tiny little target audience. So I kind of felt like it ran its course, and I just was kind of running out of material and not generating the interest I'd hoped. But I come to find out that nobody has podcasts in that whole area of topic because no one listens. So there you go with that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the idea for how I got this podcast and why I decided to put it in motion and why you're all here with me. Oh my gosh. One of the goals I have with every podcast I approach, it's just my personal preference. It's what I do, and it works for me. And that's to have kind of an atmosphere where it feels like we're just kind of hanging out together and I'm talking directly to you. And I kind of keep it personal that way. My second podcast, we're going to go back to that for a minute. I was amazed at how many people would contact me and tell me that they just loved to binge listen to it. They would turn it on at nighttime. Had a couple cousins that would do this. No interest in the topic matter. Zero. Didn't care. But they loved just hearing me talk and banter, and they said that I made them feel very safe and happy, and it was pleasant to listen to, so they would drift off to sleep feeling safe, like they had a friend in the room with them. And at first, I wasn't quite sure how to process that. It's like, really? You listen to my podcast because it's boring? And they're like, no. It's not that it's boring. It's that you're really nice to listen to. So that was kind of funny to me. And I thought, well, gosh, maybe I should just have a podcast where I talk sometime to help people sleep. And the idea was in there this whole time, but I never took it seriously until life started getting very challenging for a while, and I was developing some really high anxiety and kind of battling some depression, circumstantial stuff, life stress kind of things. And I found myself waking up in the morning with anxiety, waking up in the middle of the night with anxiety. And the one thing I realized that was triggering it worse than anything was that I really loved, there was a, true crime type podcast that I was really into at the time. And then there was a couple of different scary story type podcasts. And they weren't even all that hardcore. But sometimes I think just sleeping with it, it would kind of get into my deep psyche or something. And then coupled with all the stress and all of the anxiety I was already battling, it would just do things. I don't know. It was bad. So I started seeking out different podcasts, something that wouldn't have that underlying or absolute blatant negativity in the content. You know what I mean? So I started finding like book reading, someone that was reading books. Those were okay. There's some really good ones out there, by the way. I found some really great positive mindset. Some of those were good. Some of them were just cheesy and irritating. And then some of the ones that were designed to help you sleep and help you drift off and relax or meditate. It just seemed like they forced this new agey, meditation-y voice, and it's very unnatural. They talk all weird, and I don't like that. I like just to hear someone talking in a friendly manner, having fun, enjoying their microphone, or whatever it is they're doing with their podcast. A couple podcasts I found, the two co-hosts would sit there and talk about a topic, and they wouldn't be overly excited, but it would be a topic that they were passionate about and enjoyed. Or maybe there was some humor involved, but they were kind of low-key individuals. That worked for me the best. And I think what it did for me is it just made me feel like I was in a safe place, in a safe space, surrounded by safe people, talking about safe things. And that worked for me, right? It was nice to fall asleep to because it was boring most of the time, and it was low key. But even so, some of those podcasts, you'd get tired of them with the same idea all the time. So the same idea that I want to carry out all the time is that I'm going to sit here and talk to you about it. But I'm going to change up the approach. Like I said in the trailer, sometimes I might read a book. I might do some poetry or something. I have found some amazing, super fun things in the public domain, so there's no copyright worries, and it might just be super fun and silly to fall asleep to. Definitely positive. And I found in the world, like I said, I'm not going to get into politics or news, but right now, as I record this, holy cow, politics, the news, blowing up, stress everywhere, people arguing. We just had an election. People are butting heads over that. Oh my gosh, people are losing friendships over politics, over people they've never met. Crazy. Then you take that to bed and you're all tense and mad. Not worth it. Not worth it. Let's sit here and talk about nice things. Let's put nice things in your head so you can fall asleep and have a great day tomorrow. Because guess what? All those problems and all that stress, it'll wait for you. It's going to be there. So, why take it to bed with you? You're going to be jumping back into it first thing anyway. There's no choice. We all have to, unless tomorrow's your day off. And then, oh my gosh, enjoy it. Wow. But yeah, you know what? When we sleep, that's when our bodies detox. It's when our bodies go through the most healing of anything. If it needs to heal from anything, even stress, it needs to heal from all that. And it needs to regenerate cells. It needs to just rest. Your mind has to rest also. But some of those stressful things, they just amp us up, they get us tense, and we don't sleep well. Or it affects our psyche and we wake up in the night and we're unsettled. Like I said, there was a point in time I was waking up in the night with anxiety attacks, waking up in the morning in the middle of one. That's no fun. So I had to kind of retrain my habits and slow down a little bit and take a step back and see what was going on that I could change. Money has been so tight. Oh my gosh, and it's getting worse. So not everyone has the money for just going in for all kinds of therapy and, doctor appointments and things like that. Sometimes you can go months and still never really find the right combination of stuff, right? Sometimes the answer is within you. And here again, everyone has all kinds of problems and stress and things they have to deal with. Adulting is hard, isn't it? Oh my gosh. It's no fun. It's fun to laugh about, but it's hard. So just know that I am over here on this side of the microphone talking into your ear, giving you that attaboy, that attagirl, that you got this, that you need to sleep well and wake up tomorrow and take on all those challenges head on. You will be refreshed and ready to go, but you got to sleep. So, what works for you with a podcast like this? And what do you want out of a podcast like this? Do you like just easy talking like this? Or do you like meditations led, or a couple of breathing exercises or something? I have been running into people that have that, I can't remember what it's called, misophonia? I can't remember how it's pronounced. Misophonia? Well, it's the aversion to certain sounds. And a lot of times they're like breathing, lip smacking, eating, that sort of thing. So I have actually been a long time ago in a yoga class with a friend, and the yoga instructor was leading some breathing, and the friend was about ready to go nuts because she just hated that sort of thing. It drove her crazy. She couldn't relax. So what I decided is, since this is a podcast and it's piped in through your ears, I'm not going to do the whole breathing with you. But what I suggest, and everyone does it a little different, so do what's right for you. Do you. You want to relax. But one thing that always helps is a couple really good quality, deep breathing efforts. And part of that is we breathe very shallow typically, and we don't really get the amount of oxygen we really could be utilizing. So when you take that really deep, slow breath in, and I suggest inhale to a count of 3 or 5, and then hold it for 2 to 3 seconds or 2 to 3 counts, and then let it out just as slowly. So you're going to go inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, hold it, 2, 3, exhale, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and do that, or figure out a rhythm that works for you. Many times it's advised inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. But what do you do when you have allergies or a cold or something? You do what works for you. I think the important thing more than anything is to get that little bit of rhythm going. So you just kind of have that slowness in and out, okay? And just get that full capacity of your lungs going on to the best of your ability but don't make yourself miserable. This should feel good. It should be a release of energy. So play around with that. And even as I'm talking, you can kind of play around with that. Take a few deep, slow breaths in, out. Make sure you hold it for a second or two in between, whatever works for you. But play with that. And that's going to help relax your muscles. It's going to help relax your mind. And it's a distraction from stuff that's making your mind race. So there's a lot of benefit to it. Plus, you're getting that extra oxygen in. That's going to help your body heal, replenish, and detox while you sleep. It's good for you. So what else do you like when it comes to a bore you to sleep type podcast? I don't know. I just like so many different podcasts that are out there that I wanted to kind of maybe capture a little of everything. But I also like to be helpful. And so part of this is I'm going to find some stuff online, like some tips, advice, food for thought, anything that might be helpful to make you think about something positive while you drift off to sleep. Something useful, something like, oh yeah, I could do that. But I don't want to jazz you up or anything, so it won't be too exciting. We'll kind of find that sweet spot in the boring to useful ratio. And I'm kind of thinking one thing, I don't know how you guys feel about this. I enjoy a very light amount of dabbling with certain types of AI tools. And there's a couple of chat bots that I have free accounts and I use those. And I also have some image generators I play with. So those are fun to dabble with. I think with art, it's very important to always acknowledge when you're generating something with an AI tool these days. They're getting incredibly detailed. So I think it's always good to be honest when you use a tool like that. Just because. It's just my philosophy. And when it comes to the Gemini or ChatGPT, I like both of them. Each has a little bit different vibe on what they seem good for, and they have a little bit different personality. I would say Gemini is a little bit more serious, where ChatGPT, they're starting a program to have more of a bouncy kind of personality to it. It's kind of a fun. They're both fun to play with. They're both fun. So if you haven't experimented with those, there is all sorts of things you can do with those to make your life easier in the now. And the trick is try not to replace your intelligence with them. Use them as a tool for productivity to make your life better. That's it. And they're good for that. So, do you know what I have done? And I said on this, I want to do some poetry and stuff. I can't write poetry. Are you kidding me? I'm terrible at that. But sometimes I'll have an idea for a poem that might be kind of fun to try, and I'll plug it in and put my idea in there and the parameters that I want, and one of those tools will pop out an amazing poem. And I have one for our very first episode. So it's about falling asleep, and I'm going to read that, but not quite this minute. So before we get to the conclusion, where I read the poem, of course, I wanted to kind of tell you a little bit more about myself and why podcasting is so appealing to me. Now, this is a much different approach to podcasting. Every podcast I've done so far, my other 3, have been a very upbeat, a little bit higher energy approach. Well, we don't want that when we're trying to sleep. So it's kind of a fun challenge to slow down a little bit and not just rapid fire all of my speech in your ear. It's a really neat change of pace that I'm really enjoying thus far. So I hope this works. I really hope it works. But yeah, back to what I find appealing about podcasting. I have always been kind of intrigued by radio, and it seems like throughout my life I have had a few individuals here and there that were into radio. They were DJs, announcers, whatever. One was my cousin, and his name was John. He passed away about 8 or so years ago. I'd have to look at that now. But we grew up together. He was about 6 years older than me, And he was the closest thing I had to an older brother. His dad and my mom were brother-sister. So we lived fairly close and our families would get together fairly often. And oh my gosh, I would just follow him around and all the kids in the family would follow him around. He was really great with all of us. And we just had a close relationship, right? Well, as he got older and went through high school, he wanted to go into broadcasting. And I would get to hang out with him with his little fake radio setup where he would practice before he went off to college. And it was just kind of his little thing. He was so into it. He made his own little fake radio station and he would go through the motions and practice. And I was very entertained by it. I don't even think I was 13 yet. So that really stuck in my head and I was so impressed by it. And then when he did start getting DJ jobs, he worked at a very popular rock and roll local radio station that all the kids in school listened to. So I got to say, oh yeah, that one Saturday night announcer, that's my cousin, blah, blah, blah. And I got to, name drop in an obnoxious way that meant nothing to anybody. And you think back, it's kind of funny, but it was so big to me, He ended up working in a AM radio station after that for a number of years, and I would get to go into the office on rare occasion if I was in the area or my mom and I were in the area and hang out and see his studio where he worked and stuff, and I'd have to be real quiet and stuff when he was on the air. That was really, really fun, but it left an impact on me, Years later, my husband that I was married to for about 7 years, I'm still friends with him. Really great guy. Just kind of had our time and it was time to move on, I guess, for both of us. But his mother was super. And her husband had had a local radio station in a tiny, tiny, tiny little town where she knew nothing about being a DJ, but she was thrown into it in the 60s. And she had a lot of fun. And she would tell me stories about it, all sorts of stuff. And I think between those two individuals, I just developed a very deep love for radio. I always was intrigued by it, but I never went to any kind of schooling for it. When the popularity of podcasting really took hold, that's when I was like, wonder what all this is about. So I started looking into it and I found a little class online and I just learned the basics just so I could have some hobby time with it and have fun with it. And here we are. So I hope that this podcast I can do a little bit of good for some people and be that comforting voice to help you sleep. We all need that. So my tip for the day, if you've made it this far into the episode, and I will reiterate this in the future, probably at the beginning of an episode. Once you settle in and you've got your speaker on or however you do your sound, try this. Try getting that volume at just the right level where you have to kind of lay there and be very quiet and still to be able to hear it clearly. You don't have to strain to hear it, but if you're moving around too much or you're kind of restless, you're going to miss stuff, Try to find that sweet spot on the volume where it's just right, where you have to really still yourself to pay attention. And usually that's kind of a good combination, at least for me, for kind of having to fall asleep through it very quickly. I don't know, it just triggers me to fall asleep. And I think it's that kind of having to pay attention to hear what I'm listening to. So if it's a story or a book reading or whatever, just the little bit of low volume makes it so I can't really even have other thoughts going on. And I think that's the key. So try that. See if it works. I don't know about you. I've got a little Bluetooth speaker and I charge that up and then I can set it where it makes sense. It's real small, has good sound quality. My phone is plugged in another little spot. And sometimes I like to use the timer feature on a podcast app. Sometimes I just let stuff binge until morning. Do what works for you. Eventually, we're going to have enough episodes of this podcast where you can binge. How about that? Okay, what do we got here? So I have not even read this poem yet, okay? I used the tool called Gemini, and that is owned by the Google company. And I punched in something like, write me a whimsical, lighthearted poem in the style of Shel Silverstein, because I like his children's books, and make it about being sleepy and going to sleep, but make it cute. Something like that. I'm not sure how I put the description in. So this is what a chat bot spit out for a poem, okay? And the name of the poem is The Sleepy Snail and the Moonbeam's Trail. That's a mouthful already. Okay, let's see how this goes. A sleepy snail named Shelly Sue was tired and green and sticky too. She longed for sleep, a cozy dream of raspberry tarts and moonlit gleam. She crawled and crawled so slow and small toward the moon, so big and tall. "O moon," she sighed, "I cannot sleep. My thoughts like bouncy bunnies leap." The moon, he winked a silver eye, "Just follow my trail across the sky. It's made of stardust, soft and bright, and leads to slumber land tonight." So Shelley followed, slow and sure, the moonbeam's path all silver pure, past puffy clouds like cotton balls, and sleepy stars that softly fall. She saw a dreamy dragonfly who hummed a gentle lullaby, and heard a whispering willow tree who sang of sleep and honey tea. She passed a field of sleepy sheep who counted themselves while they did sleep, and saw a snoring bumblebee who buzzed a tune so drowsily. At last she reached a cozy place with pillows soft and beds of lace. It smelled of cinnamon and dew, and dreams came true for Shelley Sue. She snuggled down so snug and tight, and kissed the moon good night, good night. The moonbeam tucked her in with care, and whispered secrets in the air of sleepy snails and moonlit trails, and dreams that fill the silver pails of raspberry tarts and honey sweet, and slumberland for sleepy feet. So Shelley slept and dreamed and smiled, a happy, sleepy little child. The moonbeam watched with gentle grace as slumber filled the cozy place. And if you're tired, like Shelley Sue, just close your eyes and think it through. Imagine stars and moonbeams bright, and sleep will come with all its might. Oh, that was cute. That was really cute. I'm impressed. I'm very impressed. I hope you're sleeping. I hope you missed all of that. And I hope that you have pleasant dreams and wake up refreshed and renewed and ready to take on the world with a whole new level of energy and a fantastic attitude to match. Oh my gosh. This has been a wonderful first episode. This has been fun talking to you. I'm going to get this edited and into your eardrums. And until next time, sleep tight and good night.